out at me was that we have military advisors that advise the leaders of these commando units, of the Wolf Brigade, of the Scorpion Brigade. There's one that's called the Special Police Commandos. The leader is Adnan Ahmed. And the U.S. military advisor to Adnan is James Steele, who led U.S. Special Forces in El Salvador in the 1980s. So there's, I think, my colleagues in CPT who've been researching this a lot, think that there really is a link between the government policies that we used in Central America in supporting commando groups and police states and what's happening right now in Iraq. And it's a really scary pattern to watch unfold. So watch for that. There's one more name here that has popped up in a number of these articles, and that's Steve Castile. Is the senior U.S. advisor to the Iraqi Ministry of the Interior that has oversight over these commando groups. Steve Castile also spent years in Latin America as a top official in the Drug Enforcement Administration. We hear a lot about the casualty count. One of the things I noticed over the summer was the Baghdad casualty count. We started talking to people at the morgue because bodies kept turning up with things like drill holes in them or just severe beatings. And Robert Fisk wrote an article this July that reported there were 1,000 bodies that turned up in the Baghdad morgue just in July alone. And that's under the previous regime, I can't remember the statistic, it was less than 300 a month. So it was a tremendous spike in just bodies turning up at the morgue. And they didn't include people who've been killed in bombings, like a car bomb or something that wasn't included. We've spent a lot of time listening to people who had survived torture. And ultimately, we hope to issue a report on this because my colleagues disappeared. We spent 24/7 the last couple months trying to work for their release, but the team now is starting to go back to our previous project on torture. To make the reality of torture even a little more personal, I want to talk about these people here in these photographs, and they do pop up in the slideshow. They are members of the Palestinian refugee community in Iraq. I never knew this, but if you are of Palestinian descent, you're born in Iraq, you're not an Iraqi citizen, you're Palestinian. And it apparently is that way in any Arab country. So there are a whole number of people whose ancestors came over when they were deported in 1948. All of these Palestinians were born in Iraq, but they don't have the rights of citizenship. And under the new government, they are actually targeted as a community for house raids, mass detentions, and torture. So we got involved in the community for those reasons, and some of them decided this fall that they were going to flee and seek refuge in Syria. They asked us if we would come with them through the desert, if we would ride with them on the bus to provide some modicum of protection, since we're in an international organization. They were afraid that when they passed through the Iraqi checkpoints, that all the men on the bus would be detained. It's a legitimate fear. A number of the men in the community have been detained, and the best friend of the organizer was tortured and killed. So we talked it over as a group, as we always do when we're making a pretty dangerous decision, and we decided that we would go with them. And for me personally, it was a big test, because I'm always saying that we're really all one family, and that's why violence is not possible, because we can never, if we're really one family, we have to find a better way to solve problems than by hurting each other. So here was my test. If members of my blood family were about to flee across the desert and they asked me to come with them, would I come? I had to go, even though I was really scared long-winded. So we went with them, sailed through the checkpoints because of the international presence we found our way through. And we wound up on the border between Iraq and Syria. They were there for a few months. We stayed with them in tents for 2 weeks until we were sure that they wouldn't be kicked out back to Iraq. And currently, they are inside a refugee camp in Syria, but they don't have freedom of movement. There are 7 children, 4 women, and 7 men. And they're living in these clay clay huts. I went to visit them in December, and they don't have quite enough food. I talked to one of them this morning by phone, and he said that they need more basic supplies, food, warm clothing for the winter. So I'm trying to help them, and if you'd like to, again, get on my mailing list, I'll still be sending updates about their situation. There's still 23,000 Palestinians left in Iraq. 18 made it into a refugee camp. But the other 23,000 are still fearful of the house raids and the danger of torture that is going on. Another thing I noticed this fall that I hadn't noticed so much before are the fissures in Iraqi society. Maybe it's easier for us to make friends in CPT because we're foreigners, but we have friends. I started counting this fall. I have friends who are Christian, Sunni Muslim, Shia Muslim, who like Sistani, and Shia Muslims who like Muqtada Sadr, who tend to disagree with each other, Palestinian refugees, Yazidis, which is a different religious group in the north, Kurds, Sabaeans, which is a different religious group, they follow John the Baptist. I think there's one more group. I forget. But all those, at least 8 different groups. And I realized this fall that so many of my friends don't like each other. One of my best friends, she's a young woman, 28 years old, started warning me when we started working with the Palestinians. Watch out. I have to admit to you, I don't trust Palestinians. Watch out for the Palestinians. My beloved neighbors, Sahab and Maysoon, they're Shia. When Fallujah was bombed a year ago, I remember them telling me, well, you know, the people in Fallujah, they're dangerous. It's okay. We're glad that the U.S. is bombing. So many of my friends don't get along with each other. And I see the presence of, we wonder a lot, well, should the U.S. soldiers pull out? Because if we pull out, maybe there will be civil war. But what I've observed is that the presence of a foreign army on Iraqi soil exacerbates those fissures, because they're not, the presence of a foreign army is not viewed as a neutral presence. They're viewed mostly as being on the Shia side. So I just see the foreign presence as deepening these fissures and actually increasing the chance for civil war. People would always ask us, you know, how can you be in Iraq without guns? Or Iraqis would say, you're crazy. I want you to have more protection. I want you should live in a hotel with guards. And we always said that our security was in our friendships. And paradoxically, I've never experienced that to be more true than when 4 of my colleagues went to a meeting and never came back. And that's because, I don't think it got much coverage here, but in the Middle East, I was in Syria at the time and then in Jordan, so I watched all the Middle East coverage. The Muslim community exploded in support of us. There were demonstrations all over the Palestinian territories. There were Palestinians whose homes were going to be demolished by Israeli bulldozers who didn't attend their own press conference so that they could go to a demonstration asking for the release of the CPTers. There were Muslim leaders from groups that didn't get along with each other, that all issued statements on behalf of those poor Christians. So even though, someone took them, I feel as if we're safer than ever before in Iraq because of those friendships and because of the support that the community needs. At least 60 groups in Iraq spoke out and gave statements on behalf of my colleagues. So it became real to me that our friendships really do protect us, and that even though we didn't stop the war, and even though we might not have stopped the torture, something happened, and it became clear in the support that followed the tragedy. As a way to segue into the discussion, you might have things to say about any of those points, but often what people ask me is, well, what can we do? What can we do? And I've been thinking about that a lot too. There's a bazillion things that you can do, but it helps me to think about it so that I don't get overwhelmed. It helps me to think about it in terms of 3 levels. We We can do direct intervention to try to change our government's policies. And all those things we can do. Demonstrations, boycotts, interrupting the economic system, signing petitions, going to things like this, all sorts of things. But Gandhi, the second level though, the constructive program, Gandhi always said that we can't just oppose war, we have to build a new society. That's why he spun for an hour a day and made his own clothes and tried to get people less reliant on mass production. So what can we do to build new communities? What can we do to educate ourselves or to live more simply? Anything you do in those areas is also working for peace. And then the last level is, for me, contemplative practice. And that's really the deepest and most real level. And what I mean by that is, whatever we do to walk through fear, rather than get defensive and lash out, or whatever we do to meet and encounter someone completely different from us, again, instead of protecting ourselves and getting defensive, that's work towards a new way of being, even in the international community. If, as nations, we could walk through our fear instead of trying to build huge weapon systems to protect ourselves, maybe it would be a different world. So I say I'm offering this idea I have about the 3 levels as a means of encouragement. If you feel like you're not doing enough, or if you feel frustrated, you're always doing something.
Chief, you mentioned these commando units. They tend to be primarily Sunni, Shia, what are the implications of that?
That's a very good question. Primarily, they are Shiite. There's one, the special police commando, Adnan Khan, is actually Sunni. He actually has connections to the old regime. But the vast majority of them are Shia. So the implications of that are just sort of increased use of violence, because the people that they're tending to go after are people in Sunni neighborhoods, like Palestinians or all Sunni. Or this is, for example, when I was in Fallujah, which is the Sunni town, the Fallujahs pointed out that all of the Iraqi police who were sent to police Fallujah after the military assault were Shia from the south, from a completely different neighborhood, different outlook. So it increases the chance of violence because there are people who historically have not understood each other or gotten along. And one of those two groups has all the guns and all the authority. So that's the problem.
How different? They speak the same language, Arabic. How different are they?
So how different are the Sunni Shia question? I have loads of friends who would say, Sunni and Shia were like this, we're brothers, we're the same, it doesn't matter. And a lot of people feel that and believe it. The technical difference is that back in the history of Islam, it's a disagreement over the person who succeeded the prophet in authority. The Sunni tradition believes that it doesn't have to be someone who's related by blood to the Prophet Muhammad, and Shia believe that it has to be related by blood. Over the years, they've developed slightly different ways of praying, but really a comparison would be the difference between, say, Orthodox and Catholic and Protestant. But it's essentially all of those 3 groups I just think are all Christian, right? Well, it's the same with Sunni Shia. They're Muslim. But the differences and the reasons for the tensions are numerous, but sometimes it's a class issue. Sadr City, which is full of Shia, they're mostly young, poor, uneducated. People from that community are sent to patrol in Fallujah, heavily Sunni. And a number of people in Fallujah were more in power during Saddam's regime. So sometimes it's a class difference, sometimes it's a payback that violence comes because before the Sunni were in power. Now it's payback time. It's very, very complicated. But in terms of the essential difference, history and practice really seems essential difference.
That idea that makes my question is, are there a lot of torture being committed by payback versus people who are regime, or just in general
torture payback, honestly, I don't know. I don't think I've taken enough testimonies to know, but there are some very good reports online. One is by Human Rights Watch. They issued a report on torture last January, a whole year ago. And so those are very instructive to read. But I would suspect it's a combination of all those things. Plus, I mean, like you point out, under the old regime, torture was the order of the day. That's how they did things. So it's just the way that things happened in police stations and, places where there's a disparate level of authority, prisons before. So it's just more of the same thing.
Just more of a
Yeah.
treatment.
Well, in terms of the number of more, yeah.
Can you give us some idea of what your daily schedule was like over there and the kind of food you ate?
Oh, sure. The daily schedule. I can. In terms of our work, it really differed day to day. It depended just what happened and what the needs were. But CPT, we do have a community structure, and it actually helps when you're living in a war zone to have some sort of external structure that you stay faithful to. So we would pray together every morning. We take turns because it's an ecumenical organization. We had Quakers and we have silent, we just sit in silence together. Or Peggy is from Church of the Brethren, so we would often have lots of singing and reading from scripture and things like that. But we have about half an hour of prayer in the morning. Then we would have a meeting to discuss the work of the day and what we needed to do. Then we'd do the work of the day. And that could be anything from going out to take a torture testimony, which takes hours and hours, and often takes more than one day. Maybe we had a trip to Fallujah that day, and that again would be an all-day affair. Maybe it was my turn to cook dinner that night, and the main thing I had to do was go shopping and buy everything that I needed. And then if I had extra time, I'd go down and visit some neighbors and play with their kids. I tried to do that often enough to stay positive. Being with kids always helps me. And then things would just happen when people call and say, oh, my, our translator maybe would call and say, my neighbor's son got taken away, and she's wondering, she knows I work for you guys, and she's wondering if you can go with her to the base and see if he's at the base. And then we had to shuffle and see if we could do that right away, or if we had to make an appointment. Those are the sort of things that happen. Then we try to line up and have dinner together. That was the one meal a day we'd eat together at 7 o'clock. And we would eat, we cooked Western food for ourselves for the most part. But if I ate in an Iraqi home, which I would do at least once a week, rice, chicken, vegetables, sort of standard there. Fried eggplant is really big. Stuff like that. You've had your hand up more time.
You heard the talk of the militias. Are they the same thing as the commandos you talked about, or is that something else?
I use them interchangeably.
Are they part of the Iraqi army now?
That's a good question. Who are the militias? Are they part of the Iraqi army? There's so many different militias, and I think some of them may be special forces units within the Iraqi army. So that those would be under the Ministry of Defense in terms of oversight and training. But a number of them are under the Ministry of the Interior, which to Iraqis is the center of the secret police. That's where the secret police was, under Saddam, Ministry of the Interior. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why. So the Ministry of the Interior is viewed as, really scary guy. He's lost members of his family to kidnapping. There was a bombing at the Ministry of the Interior in response to the torture that's been going on.
Like Kurds have militia?
Yes.
Sunnis and Shiites?
Well, there are a lot of militias, yeah. I mean, the area of Iraq I'm most ignorant about is the north. I have never traveled there. But the Peshmerga is the biggest Kurdish force. There's a number. There's a really good article in the New York Times that just lists different militias and who they're affiliated with. There are even some from Iran, the Bagh Brigade, sort of allied with Iran. So the question is, if I see the beginnings of a nonviolent people's movement in Iraq, I always thought, there have been instances of nonviolent people's movement already. So a year and a half ago, in August, there were the Sadr's people were in Najaf, remember, holed up in the Holy Shrine, and there was a huge, violent, bloody standoff between the Mehdi militia in the shrine and the Marines around the shrine. Well, Sayyid Sistani, who's the other big Shia figure, called a march into Najaf, and it's something like 8,000 people marched from Karbala to Najaf, and ended up finally putting an end to the violence. And Sistani was very strict, no weapons allowed, nothing like that. So it's happened. And what frustrates me about Iraq is that there are some figures who have that power. They have like Gandhi's power to mobilize people. Sistani could do it. Muqtada Sadr could do it. We witnessed once, after the Abu Ghraib scandal, he organized a whole bunch of people from Sadr city to march to the Green Zone, which is where sort of the center of the occupation for all the government building, the U.S. government building. And they prayed in front of the Green Zone. Thousands of young guys doing the Muslim prayer. Very powerful. And basically it was just a message to say, here we are. And it was nonviolent. So it's possible. But they haven't been consistent in choosing those methods. This is Jim, Hermit, Norman, and Tom. And I've worked with Tom in Iraq for a year. He's 54, Quaker, very peaceful. We prepared, we were on a team together a year ago, right after Margaret Hassan had been kidnapped. So by that point, we were pretty much the only foreigners living outside the Green Zone in Iraq. So we prepared a lot to get kidnapped, and we all wrote letters to our families in the case of kidnapping. And I just remember Tom was so peaceful about it. And in his statement of conviction, he wrote that, if he had to make the ultimate sacrifice in front of the enemy, that he felt that he would have the grace and the means to do it. Jim and Hermit and Norman actually were in Iraq on a delegation. Jim was the leader. I've worked with him twice before. He's been in Iraq 3 times. And he was leading this delegation. And so I didn't know Hermit or Norman very well because they had just come in for this 10-day trip. And I don't know what else to say. I mean, pray for their families more than anything. Because they all prepared. We really believe that we have to be willing to risk everything. But I learned more this fall than anything how hard it is on my family and friends. So just keep them in your prayers. But as for any news about them, there's been no news since December 10th, which is when the last video was issued. That was the deadline. But there have been hostages released. The French journalists that were kidnapped were released 4 months after they were taken. So we still believe that there's a chance they could be alive and could be released. There's more pictures of them in the back.
What sense are you getting of the possibility for success of a democratic government?
What sense possibilities for democratic government? I have to hope that it can happen. I know the man who's in charge of the Independent Electoral Commission, and he is the man of the most integrity I think I know in Iraq. So I trust him with my life and know that he's working as hard as he can for free, fair elections. But honestly, I don't think I can answer the question with enough background. I don't know enough about the way the political process is going. What do you all think? Somehow when you're in the middle of it, I can't keep up with it as well, with the macro picture.
Of course, all we're getting is the slant that we're supposed to hear. And I don't trust that. And I'm just wondering if you had any insight into the attitudes of the people and the conflicts between the Shias and the Sunnis.
Yeah, they vote. I've not actually been there for election days. I was stuck on the border for the last election, or the October referendum. I don't know. I think it's possible that there could be a formal democracy in Iraq. structures are already there, and it's been in action now for a year. So even if there's a democracy on the surface, I'm not confident that people will be really free in their day-to-day lives, free from the torture and detention without warrants and without cause, things like that. Because it's still going on. That hasn't changed with the imposition of democracy.
How has your contemplative prayer life changed?
There are some things that I stopped doing that I used to do here that were very important to me, like journaling every day. Or I wasn't always as good as I was here with actually sitting down for contemplative prayer every single day. Sometimes I would miss it. But in those times I really experienced God in the people that I met, in relationships. Both in extremely painful times. Like there was one time I witnessed a bombing and knew that there had been a simultaneous bombing in another city where my friends were, these little kids that I loved. And I didn't know till the next day that they were all right. When I laid eyes on this little girl, Huda, I just burst into tears and hugged her, and that's when I knew how much I loved her. And that was a contemplative insight moment. But someone asked me, I can't remember who asked me, how I could be so happy. For me, honestly, grieving is prayer now. I cry every day. I don't start now. But that's how I pray. But then in the middle of, I tried to express this in Arabic this morning. Maybe I can do it better in English. In the very center of the pain and suffering, there's a very wide place of peace. And in that place are all the people in the whole world. And then we're all together. And that's how I can be happy the rest of the time, I think. Is trying to enter